This is the video for our reading of Macbeth. This is just to provide an overview of the play. Ideally, you're reading for yourself, and you're more than allowed to go out online and see what are other people saying. If there's cinematic versions that you want to watch as well, I can recommend the Michael Fassbender Macbeth, and of course the one I really enjoy is the Denzel Washington Macbeth version that came out a few years ago. But ideally, you need to be reading the play for yourself. One reason why I would recommend the Denzel Washington version is it sticks very closely to the text. Anyways, with that said, this second paper on Macbeth is going to be what we call a literary analysis. And literary analysis or analysis requires a zooming in, a close-up, looking at a specific part, but then that must always be done by zooming out, taking a wide shot, and considering how that specific part works with the entire piece itself. And you've got the handout available for you on the literary elements. One of the first things I want to talk about is the first point, that of the image. The opening image of any story, especially a great work, is important. And I think the opening image in Macbeth sets the stage for what this play is ultimately exploring. I do think the play Macbeth explores the question of the nature of evil. It assumes that evil exists. It assumes or reveals to us that nature has the nature of evil, it has an interest in us. Because when we first meet those witches and they tell us fair is foul and foul is fair, what's good is bad, what's bad is good, we're entering into a world that's upside down. And then they tell each other that they're going to separate and come together again when they meet Macbeth. And so we should sit back and think, why do they want to meet Macbeth? Is he a witch just like them? Is he, some other person? What is their interest in Macbeth? And shortly thereafter, pretty much the next scene, we meet another very important figure, and that is the figure of King Duncan. And Duncan gets a report from a wounded soldier who witnessed Macbeth and Macbeth's friend in battle, and testifies that Macbeth was brave. Macbeth was skilled with a sword and was able to dispatch the enemy of King Duncan. Aristotle will say in his Nicomachean Ethics that of all the virtues, the one that we must have before we can really have any of the others is the virtue of courage. So we learn that Macbeth is a loyal man. He's skilled at warfare. He's courageous, and more than likely he's good. And then we finally meet Macbeth and Banquo as they are coming back from the battle. They're no doubt they're exhausted, and they're also probably a bit elated because they just had a traumatic experience. Hand-to-hand combat to the death is a traumatic experience. And this is when the witches appear. Now, this moment in which these witches appear, it's known as the catalyst or the inciting incident. This is the moment that if you will, a fork is going to be set out in the road. And based on this event, Macbeth and, of course, Banquo are going to have some decisions to make. They tell Macbeth he will be king. They tell Banquo that he will be the father of kings. He will have a line of kings. The witches also tell Macbeth that he will be, I believe it's Thane of Cawdor. It's another title, a title that Macbeth doesn't have. And Macbeth is, at first wants to dismiss what the witches are saying because, well, the Thane is alive and I can't have that title. The witches disappear. And you can go back and read that scene, what the witches look like. How would we respond if we came across someone like that who knew our name even though we didn't know them? And they claim to have insights into our future. How would we respond to that? So Macbeth and Banquo are left alone. They're talking a little bit about what they just experienced. And these other soldiers from Duncan arrive and tell Macbeth that Duncan wants to meet you, and you're going to be Thane. And when Macbeth hears that, he realizes that the witches have told him something true. Banquo has a fantastic line there early on where he says, The instruments of darkness will win us with trifles to lure us to our destruction. There's another fascinating thing here about the nature of evil or the nature of sin is that it can know truth and it can offer some truth, but is it ultimately interested in the truth? Is it interested in guiding us towards the truth? After that, Banquo and Macbeth go to meet Duncan, and Duncan um, makes the announcement that Macbeth is going to be Thane, and he tells Banquo, I don't have any other titles to give you, but I will do what I can to make sure that you flourish. And then Duncan makes the announcement that his son Malcolm will be the next king, and this sets Macbeth off. Macbeth starts to plot sinister things, things he keeps to himself. And then after that, we meet Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth is reading a letter from her husband. Her husband is telling her that here's what happened. The witches met me. They said these things. It turned out to be true. Duncan and his entourage are coming to our property to spend the night. We're gonna put a feast on for them, and let's be prepared for that. Lady Macbeth, what she says there is extremely important. She does not believe that her husband is mean enough to obtain what he wants. He's too full of the milk of kindness, she says. And one of the things this play explores, fascinatingly enough, is not just human nature, not just the nature of evil. It's also exploring human nature. And then, of course, it has some great lines that go further into, well, what is the nature of a man and what is the nature of a woman? And of course, Lady Macbeth is saying, my husband's too full of the milk of kindness. It's almost too much like a woman to go get what he needs to get. Macbeth will show up, and Lady Macbeth will tell her husband, we're going to kill Duncan. And Macbeth's response is, we'll talk about this later. So clearly he and his wife are on the same page. They don't have the time to discuss it any further. And it's after that moment when Lady Macbeth will go off by herself and she will practice witchcraft. She will speak out to the instruments of darkness and she will say, unsex me here. She wants to be made from a woman into a man so that she can go commit this violent crime against Duncan. And it's not that women can't commit violent crimes. This is important to understand. Shakespeare lived in the world. He observed people. He knew men. He knew women. He knew human nature. I think Shakespeare had some great insights into the nature of evil. We can go all the way back to Sophocles. Sophocles gives us some great insights into the nature of pride, into the reality of wisdom, into what men and women can do, and what a human being is. History has revealed, though, that most violent crimes are committed by men. It doesn't mean that all men are monsters, but they definitely have more of that surge to commit those violent crimes. And women, of course, can commit violent crimes, but when they go after someone, there's usually something perhaps a little more subtle. The use of language. There's going to be some deception involved. Poison throughout the history of the world is a tactic often used by women. And there's a great line in the show Seinfeld, for those of you who are aware of the show. If you're not, it's a good show. There's a scene in which the four friends are sitting around talking, and the woman in the group is talking about men, how you guys always want to fight and you always want to put on this show and show how macho you are, and that's how you take each other out. And then the question is put to her, well, how do women do that when they go after someone they don't like? And she says, oh, they just talk about you behind your back until you develop an eating disorder. At any rate, Lady Macbeth is planning to commit this murder herself. And when Duncan does arrive at the castle, and we've looked at this in the forums, Macbeth has a great argument with himself as to why he shouldn't kill Duncan. We're related. He's my king. I'm his host. He's also a good man. And I can't get away with it. He will tell his wife they're not going to commit the murder, and his wife pushes back with a great argument. Right? Her whole argument is wrapped up in, you made a promise, and now you're breaking your promise. And if you break a promise, that means I can't trust you. And you're breaking a promise because you're a coward. And because you're a coward, you're not a real man. And if I made a promise to you, I know what it's like to have a child. I would take that child and kill that child to keep my promise to you. It's worth thinking about the reality of promises. Who wants to have promises broken? Who wants to be known as someone who is untrustworthy, someone who is a coward? None of us. And so if we take what Lady Macbeth is saying, much of it is excellent. But we cannot overlook the fact that the promise she's talking about is the promise to commit murder. She will persuade her husband to go through with the crime, and the plan is that she will actually kill Duncan. She will drug all of their alcohol that night at the party so that everyone will be that much inebriated. She will go in and kill Duncan, and then she will take the daggers that she uses to kill him and place them on his guards, and the guards will be framed for the crime. Shortly thereafter, we realize that Lady Macbeth doesn't kill Duncan. She has a moment just to herself in which she says, "Had he not resembled my father, I would have killed him." That's an interesting statement. There's something worth exploring there with Lady Macbeth. So what happens is Macbeth goes through and commits the crime. Macbeth is the one who actually kills Duncan, and he will show up still carrying the daggers in his hands. His wife will chastise him, rightly so. We don't want to keep the murder weapon with us. She then will take the daggers back into Duncan's room. She will smear the blood on the guards, and she will come back, and there's an exchange there between her and her husband that's worth reading. We won't have time to go into it. The next morning, Duncan's body is found. Macbeth will go in and kill the guards. And when asked, "Why did you kill the guards?" "We needed to interrogate them. They were essentially probably the only witnesses to the crime." Macbeth says, "My love for Duncan compelled me to take justice on his murderers." So now Macbeth is king. And then he will remember that while he is king, Banquo was promised a line of kings. Now, this is when Macbeth could sit back and say, "I've got what I want. That's all that I need." But one of the things we also see with the nature of evil, the nature of sin, is that it corrupts. It says, "Here's this thing you want. I will give you that thing." But that thing never satisfies. And we're always left wanting more. And usually, and this is when I think Macbeth, when envy starts to grow even more, Macbeth, because envy, another word for envy is covetousness. It's, I want what you want and I will take it from you. It's not the same as saying, "Hey, I like the way that this woman carries herself. I like the way that this man speaks. I want to cultivate that in my life." It's, I want what they have and I'll do what I can to take it from them or to tear down what they have to try to elevate what I have. Macbeth will order the murder of Banquo and of Banquo's son. Banquo will be killed, the son will escape. So now we reach about the midpoint of the play. Macbeth has achieved the crown. He and his wife have achieved what they wanted. Not only did he get the crown, he's also killed Banquo. He's taken Banquo out of the picture. And then Banquo's ghost appears at a dinner. Macbeth is the only one who can see him, and Macbeth has a meltdown, yelling and screaming at this ghost. Lady Macbeth is very quick on her feet. She tells the crowd, "My husband's having a seizure. He's had these things since he was a child. He just needs rest. Everyone go home. We will gather again tomorrow." Everyone leaves the castle. Lady Macbeth and her husband have a scene together in which she tells him, "You have got to pull it together." Go back to her argument with her husband. The thing that finally convinced Macbeth that they could do this murder, when he asks his wife, "What if we fail?" Lady Macbeth's response is, "We fail? Like, you really think that we'll mess up?" She says, "Screw your courage to the sticking place and we'll not fail." The sticking place in that time was a post or a beam in the center of the village in which you could nail a pamphlet or an announcement to it. And the more thoroughly you secured it, it's not going to come off of there. And so what Lady Macbeth is basically saying is, whatever desire you have, go fulfill that desire. And as long as you do it with confidence, as long as you do it with courage, you will get what you want and you won't have to deal with any of the adverse consequences. And here we see at the arrival of Banquo's ghost that one of the things Macbeth can't escape is guilt. And the one way his wife wants to deal with guilt is just ignore it. Macbeth will tell his wife, and this is the midpoint. The midpoint of the story is extremely important. It's wherein the characters think that they have achieved what they wanted, but something else will come along and it will change, and it will cause the story to have to push on forward. We see this when Creon sends Antigone off to her death. Antigone's gotten what she wanted. I want to die for something noble. Creon has gotten what he wanted. I want to execute those who break the law. And once that happens, then we have Haman to show up. And then we have Tiresias to show up, right? And do battle with Creon. Macbeth sees Banquo's ghost. Macbeth has an opportunity to follow his wife's advice, just play it cool, or he could turn himself in. And instead he tells her, I am too far into blood to turn back now. He will return to the witches and they will tell him two prophecies. You will not die unless Birnam Wood, a forest, walks, and we know trees don't walk, and you can only die if a man not born of woman kills you. Well, all men, all women are born of women. So Macbeth takes these little riddles and he takes them as evidence that he is invincible. What he doesn't know, what we as readers know, is that before Macbeth shows up, we find out why the witches wanted to meet Macbeth. They wanted to have their fun with him. They wanted to destroy him. I think herein lies the heart of sin, the heart of evil. It ultimately wants to destroy. When we go back to the beginning of the play, I think one of the things this play is exploring is, in a world that is upside down, in a world where evil is prominent, does the good exist? And can the good triumph? We see evidence of the good throughout this play in the person of Duncan. We see evidence of the good, and when Macbeth knows, here's why I shouldn't kill the man. We'll see evidence of the good in Lady Macduff. Because after Macbeth tells his wife, I'm going further into blood, not only does he visit the witches, he orders people to go out and slaughter other people in Scotland. Lady Macduff is extremely important for at least two reasons. One, her husband is Macduff, and Macduff and Malcolm, Duncan's son, when they know that Duncan is dead and they know they didn't kill him, they flee Scotland because they believe whoever killed Duncan is going to have to try to kill them or frame them for the murder. Now, if you and I were just sitting around the morning that Duncan wakes up and we see these two guys leave, we're probably going to think that they're guilty. Macduff does not send word to his wife. We find out later he didn't want anyone to be able to come to her and say, where's your husband? He didn't want to involve her in this business at all. He probably also thought, you're not going to kill a woman and her children. We have this great scene with Lady Macduff where she tells us what wisdom is. I encourage you to go look at that scene. It's an excellent example of how do you define something and how do you provide an image. And the image of wisdom that Lady Macduff gives is that of a wren, the most diminutive, the smallest of birds, fighting to protect her little ones in the nest against the owl. And then, of course, soldiers of Macbeth show up and kill Lady Macduff. They kill her child, and they'll burn the entire property. When word finally reaches Macduff and Malcolm tells Macduff, use this to fuel you to go attack Macbeth. And Macduff has a great line there where he says, if I'm to avenge this like a man, let me first feel it like a man. And I do think this is where Shakespeare is saying, hey, it's okay to feel things. It's okay to feel them on a very high dramatic level. Macduff and Malcolm will rally some troops in England and they will come after Macbeth's castle. One of Macbeth's men will say, the trees are moving. And what has happened is Macduff and his soldiers have cut branches off of the woods from Birnam Forest. They have used them as camouflaged to approach the building. So there's the first riddle that the witches said. And as the soldiers are attacking, word comes to Macbeth that his wife is dead. And she's probably taken her life. And of course, you've responded to that in the forum, some of you, right? Macbeth espouses what's known as nihilism. Nothing. Life is meaningless. Life is a tale told by an idiot full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. This is the darkest hour for Macbeth. He's at his lowest point. And usually the darkest hour is a reflection of the catalyst moment, the debate moment. Because the catalyst of the witches, Macbeth enters into a debate sequence. Should I kill him? Should I not? And his wife is part of that. Here's why we should kill him. Now he's losing everything, and he's lost his closest relationship, his wife. And what he says about her and about life in general, that's very dark. And yet, does he live according to that? As we'll see, as the soldiers break through the castle, Macbeth will tell soldiers who come up to him, don't try to kill me, I live a charmed life. And he'll kill someone, young Seaward, who attacks him. But eventually Macbeth and Macduff will face off. And Macbeth will tell Macduff, I live a charmed life. I can only be killed by a man not born of a woman. And Macduff will say, I was from my mother's womb untimely ripped. There was a cesarean section that Macduff was brought into the world through. So at that time, technically not born of a woman. Macbeth realizes that the witches have told him riddles, lies, and he has an opportunity to turn himself in. And Macduff will even say, turn yourself in and face the punishment for what you've done. And Macbeth, much like Creon, where Creon will turn, he will say, it's so hard not to give the heart what it wants, but I will submit. Macbeth says, I will never submit. I will never bow the knee to Malcolm. And he and Macduff will engage in combat, and Macduff will remove the head of Macbeth from his shoulders. And the play will end with Malcolm and his soldiers outside the castle. Macduff shows up carrying Macbeth's head, and they will agree to go back to Scotland, and Malcolm will reward those who have served him, much like Malcolm did for his father. But if this is a story that explores the nature of evil and its relationship with human nature, let's say Malcolm is a good king, just like his father Duncan. That's no insurance that he won't be killed in his bed. But if Malcolm is a human being, as is Macbeth, and Macbeth could be corrupted, Malcolm will take the throne of Scotland and will not be immune to the temptations of evil coming to him. And if not him, those who are within his party. So I do think that evil exists. I think this play lays that out. I think evil is interested in us. It comes to us in very enticing ways, ultimately to win us to our destruction. I think good does exist, and the play lays this out, and we see this in Antigone, and we'll see evidence of this in the other things that we'll read this semester. And therefore, the need to stay vigilant and to fight, to be careful of our own hearts, and to help others as much as is reasonable, is how we respond to the existence and the nature of evil.